What's up? Welcome to On My Block, a Green Bay Packer podcast. I'm the host of Mon Green, along with my good friend and teammate Mike Wall, who's about to come and clear off the pile right about there, doing his job. I love it. I always love seeing that on film right there.
It's
now
delicious.
and then, it's awesome.
It's delicious.
It's just your line is doing their job all the way till the finish of the play. When you see that going on.
AG, do you know that linemen today, they'll tell me that being a guy who knocked somebody off the pile wasn't and I didn't even think about this, but it really wasn't. It wasn't about being a tough guy or, all the finishing. They said you have to be in really good shape. That's it.
Well, you were in great shape.
We were in good. All of us were in good. I mean, Marco and Mike and I in particular, we're in really good shape for linemen. But, when you talk about guys who are peeling off I just remember Flanagan going over the top in a San Diego Chargers game. He just flew over the top. It was the game that Sherman said he'd pay for our fines.
Right, and then Flanagan every now and then he'll just be a little bit late to the party, and then he'll jump over the whole pile because he know if he hits somebody, it'd be a flag.
He goes Superman style, but it was a riot. But it's funny. This one of the linemen that I work with, he's like, he's just get tired. Like, what do you mean? He goes, well, it's not really about being like everyone's a tough guy in the first series. He goes after that, everyone's hanging on. They're tired. I go, I never. We practice, so it's different now.
It's different. It's different.
Games we weren't after the first game. You're never really tired.
No, because all that stuff was part of your mindset. You knew you had to clear off piles. You knew you had to you're going to get hit on the ground and have to roll up and pop up. So it was all part of your conditioning, even in practice. So we knew that was coming down the line. So
you want to hit this read real quick from BetOnline AG, bud.
All right, man. So BetOnline is our sponsor here. BetOnline AG is your number one source for your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds, lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. Finally, a really good game 7. Miami and Celtics last night. It kind of ran too long. They got up to 20 points. I was like, what? Okay. It was close, but then Miami, they said, you know what, Jimmy Buckets, as they call him, say, hey, let's finish this thing off. So BetOnline is always your source, your sports information headquarters this season. When you have we have covered for all your sports wagering needs: baseball, basketball, NHL, hockey, right to UFC and boxing as well. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information, including betting options and your favorite casino card games, and you can play right from your home. So head over there to the website today and use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use the promo code BLEAV to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was a good game last night.
It was.
Game 7s are awesome, man.
Yep.
I don't care what in a while. It was fun. I think there's even hockey going on right now. I'm not really sure, but Charles Barkley's on TNT trying to bring hockey up. I'm like,
so it was 2 game 7s in Florida. So it was a game 7 last night, and then it was a hockey game 7. The Florida Predators, whoever they're playing against, in their game 7, and I think both teams won. And it hasn't happened ever. And it was like I saw a stat. I was milling around on the ESPN website, and I saw that stat. I'm like, oh, okay, nice. Fans are happy down in Florida right now.
It was nice to see. Listen, I'm never going to be a Boston fan, but of course they're a legacy franchise. So if anyone can break that streak, you assumed it was them. But it was nice to see Miami. Miami just does it right. I mean, ever since Pat Riley got there, they've just done it right.
He's still kicking.
Yeah.
He's still doing.
Eric Spoelstra's he's just a phenomenal coach that kind of goes under the radar because Miami's a big city, but it's not New York, it's not LA.
Yeah.
They've had a ton of success. I saw the stat today that said something between playing and coaching and whatever he's doing now, team president. Pat Riley's been involved in 25% of all NBA finals, which is
wow. As a player, coach, and now
CEO, which is wildly absurd.
That is amazing. I even caught some of the Notre Dame Duke men's championship lacrosse. That was pretty cool.
All you're doing is searching for something to watch. Then
I was bored.
Lacrosse is a fun sport.
Actually. It was. I was like,
lacrosse is like rugby, though. They're both those sports are a little bit difficult to watch on TV. They're fun. They're fun as hell to watch live, and those people are the best to party with. Like lacrosse and rugby guys. If you're in the stands after the game. I always say you and I, we would play it. We played.
Yeah, 100%.
But if you want to go party with a group of humans, male or female, women's lacrosse, women's rugby, men's lacrosse, men's rugby, fun people to have.
We're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, fun people to have a good time with. For
have
sure.
a good time. That Notre Dame coach was the first championship for Notre Dame in lacrosse in 35 years, or ever, and for the coach, 35 years. Took him 35
congratulations to them. Although I usually am not a Fighting Irish fan.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit of Packers today, but they're going to the second round of their OTAs. So I don't really understand OTAs. And I was coaching during the OTA situation, but basically, as opposed to back in the day where you go there a handful of times. I'll start my camera again, AD. Sorry about that. But opposed to going to the facility a handful of times for mini camps and whatnot, they're basically there all the time. And then they do these things that are like official OTAs, which they're already on the field, but now they're on the field for like official practices. And I don't know if that means there's a heightened sense of awareness or it means like they can touch each other, they can have contact. I'm not really sure, but I know they're going to their second round of OTAs. They have a 2-day OTA period today and tomorrow. And something that came out that said something to the effect, I think it was Rob Demoski, who's, we know Rob, and I think he works for ESPN now, but he said something to the effect of, the wide receivers are happy they're meshing with Jordan Love because, they're generationally, they're the same age, and they're the same spot in their life.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. I think that's a net good thing considering the fact that you've decided to go with Jordan Love.
Yes.
But I don't know if it's a newsworthy moment because you still we still have to gloss over the fact that you got rid of arguably the best quarterback in the National Football League.
Well, he wanted to get out of there. He wanted to go.
Yeah, but you get it's like you go from top 2 quarterback in the league,
correct,
to we don't know, to an unknown entity. So I guess when you're playing this, well, it's good that he's got young guys he can mesh with game. But the other side of that is we're acknowledging that they're not going to be that good.
Right.
So I suppose the question should be, would you rather be a friend to your quarterback or would you rather just play with the top 2 guy in the National Football League?
Well, that's a tough question right there.
Well, you know what I'm saying?
It's not. It's not tough. For the mindset I was in, I want to be with the best quarterback out there.
You'll find a way to be friends.
Right, and find a way to be friends with him. Yes. But as a being in this situation, you have to go. I mean, obviously you're a starter anywhere touching the ball, tight end, wide receiver, running back. Jordan got to be your bestie here and for the rest of the year, basically, as long as you're on that roster and supporting them and being genuine too, being real about it, because then obviously he'll sniff out. He's an athlete just like all of us. We know how to sniff out BS. We know how to sniff out fugazi people that's just kind of just here. Yes, man, in us, and it's like, no, man, I don't need that. I need people that around me that's gonna say, hey, man, you forgot that blitz pickup on this side. Hey, just pay attention to that. I'm on, blah blah blah. I'm like, that's making me better. Thank you. All right, cool.
Well, especially in this conversation, because the quarterback distributes the ball to these other people, then it's like it's probably not. The conversations are probably like, how do you read that? How are you seeing that? How are you seeing the single safety high, the safety rotation? How are you reading that cornerback's drop? Like all those kind of things. They can talk in it. So how do I say this the right way? Like in the short term, obviously Aaron Rodgers is the right decision. But if you're looking at the context, like if you put on your infinite glasses and you're trying to play the long game of your entire career, I do think there's a real genuine value to being in the same spot as your quarterback. Yeah. Being able to be at the same, like you're at the same status in life, you're in the same status in the organization. You still have something to prove, but you're learning. And the one thing that can be really good is to have a mentor in the building, right? So if your wide receivers are coming in and their mentor happens to be their quarterback, boy, that's an amazing thing. That wasn't the case at all, right? It wasn't the case with Brett. And it wasn't. It doesn't sound. I wasn't there, but it sounds like it wasn't the case with Aaron. And I don't think that's a negative on either one of them. That's just the reality of the situation. If you're 15 years older than these kids that are coming in, like you could be a mentor, but you also have other stuff that you want to deal with. You want to win in the moment. It's like that's not what I'm here for anymore. Mentors. A lot of people think about AG. They're like, you're a mentor when you're the last couple of years in your league, and maybe you're hanging on. Career. You're not career. Sorry. But you're hanging on. You're not quite the guy anymore. But Aaron's the guy. Like we're trying to win right now, and So this could be long-term, I think, a very, very positive thing. It's just, we have to create some narratives right now that they're not going to be like a 7 or 8 team win. They're probably going to be a 7 or 8 team win.
Correct. I mean, and to that point of the talent and the relationship thing is, when you have that talent, sometimes is that talent in the mindset of helping everybody around him and what his options are, how to do that. Because we watch sports for a long time, so we saw a guy by the name of Michael Jordan when he got to that team, how he made the talent around him, how he pushed buttons, certain ways. A lot of greats do that. Some he was right in people's faces, going after them, telling them, checking them practice. So, to each of his own. Is Jordan Love going to be that guy where eventually once he gets to know him, then he'll start, messing with him, but then he could dig in hard on hard questions and hard feedback to say, hey man, on that route, you should have did this and that. I'm not a wide receiver, but this is what I know when I seen guys run these routes where so-and-so threw the ball and it was right there on the timing. So just letting you know. So having those conversations to make everybody around him better. I know for those young receivers, that is a big thing, because obviously he's the new guy coming in after Aaron has exited, to then now say, okay, this is the guy. It helps, as we already experienced, it helps us being 1 or 2 years apart, not 15 years apart. It's a big difference.
Yeah, no doubt. And AG, I'm just going to hop to a couple of listener questions right now because they just addressed something you brought up. Okay. One of the questions was what does Jordan Love need to do this year to make you believe he's the guy going forward? And I think with something you just said, at least from obviously there's some things on the field that he has to do. And I'm not going to put a number on the yards or the wins or losses. But I think what you just said is very interesting, right? How they assume the mantle of leader of the Green Bay Packers organization, because this is a quarterback-driven organization. It has been for the last 30 years. So how you assume that mantle and the expectations that you set for yourself and the expectations that you set for the people around you, and how you expect other people to deliver on your expectations, right? Is it heavy-handed? Are you kid-gloving people? Do you do it with love? No pun intended. Do you do it by spending time? How do you lead? How do you lead this building? How do you take over that role? Because I don't know that when I'm just looking at the offensive side. David Bakhtiari is probably the default leader of that offense right now. When Mercedes Lewis is gone, all these other, Aaron's gone, obviously. Randall Cobb's gone.
You got Aaron Jones, AJ in the backfield.
Yeah, maybe Aaron and AJ. I'm going off of age and status, right? We don't know for sure, but Jordan is in a prime position to insert himself as the alpha male, the dominant leader, right? Yes. In this, how is he going to do that? What does that look like for the rest of the team?
Yeah, and he has to make sure he does that the best way possible, and which way that is, because he don't want to sputter out of the blocks. Basically, we just got out of Churchill Downs at the end of last month or a couple weeks ago. You don't want to stutter out the blocks with these new players. Some of them really young that just got drafted, but then some he spent the last 2, maybe 3 years with already, and he wants to continue that trend of when from that time, that Philly game on Monday Night Football, the game they lost, but he had a successful series. He had a series where he threw a slant route that went 70 or whatever it did once he conceded to Christian Watson. So he wants to use plays like that for building that confidence within himself and building that confidence with the players that he's playing with now. I mean, then it will come later in terms of training camp with the coaches.
The other question they had is, and this applies to skill guys as well, but offensive linemen, the question is, do they play better with a veteran quarterback versus a rookie? And the answer is obviously it depends, right? Drew Bledsoe, nobody plays good with, right? But because he holds the ball for too long.
I remember
Marco Rivera. Marco told me this. He calls me one day where when he had gone to Dallas and I had gone to Carolina. And I had Jake Delhomme. Jake was great, man. Like Jake could get rid of the ball. He was on time. Drew is a statue. He's 6'7". He's he just pops the ball and he just holds it.
Doing this the whole time.
Oh man, and he can't move. God forbid somebody.
He can't move. He had 2 big old knee braces on. I remember Drew.
So Marco calls me up and he's like, he said something to the effect of, I'll butcher the story, but something to the effect of like, I was sitting with Drew. Drew's a great guy and you got to love him. And but Marco looked at him on the bus one day and just goes, "You are really hard to block for." So it doesn't matter, right? But I think the point is, when you have the question more revolves around when you have somebody who's confident and knows what they're doing, they can go through progressions fast, and obviously is already an athlete, that is going to be easier to block
Yes.
for.
Yeah.
I never bought into this thing where like Tom Brady, the offensive line always knows where he is, so it's like easier for him to to block for him.
Yeah.
Tom Brady's easier to block for because he got rid of the ball faster than everybody else.
That too.
Right? You know what I mean? Like that. Like for
100%.
me, if I know where he's going to be every time, the defense probably knows. And what you're really saying is he's not mobile. It's not that he was
Which is okay, which is fine.
Well, so I'm just from the perspective of an offensive lineman. I would much prefer to have an athletic quarterback to block for that can evade a problem if I create one, right? Then if I lose early, he's sacked. I don't like that feeling, because it goes bad on my stats, right? I don't want to lose either way, but I don't want him to get hit. If I lose early and he can run out of the way, I would much prefer that, right? So Jordan's got the physical characteristics of that. I think with this processing speed, leadership, be able to change the play or the scheme or the protection in order to pick up a blitz on the backside of 4 weeks, something like that. I think all of that stuff's super important. I don't know that we're going to I think what'll be interesting here in reference to the offensive line is if Josh Myers continues to play center and that quarterback relationship, we don't know what that's going to look like. How many calls are the center made versus what Aaron had, the adjustments that Aaron made during the game. Frank and Mike, they made adjustments, but really ultimately Brett would say, hey, listen, they're going 4 week here. John Lynch is coming down. This is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. He switched the call. Whereas in some offenses, the center's making all the protection calls and adjustments, and the quarterback just kind of chips in every once in a while. So if they're giving more to Josh Myers, for example, because they want to take more off Jordan Love's plate, well, that would have a direct effect on I think the ability of the offensive line to maneuver around if Josh is not comfortable doing that. So that could be something that comes into the equation that makes a big difference.
Yeah, 100%. Because for Jordan, he's obviously deep in the playbook right now, learning all the little audibles, verbiage, understanding what he needs to look at from the safety standpoint. But then he has to then go back in and learn what the O-line is, and what that conversation is like among the O-linemen. During the play in the huddle, but sometimes there's a huddle. Feedback from one another. Hey, man, this guy's doing this to me over here. Let's try this next time on that double team blocker or stuff like that. And so then he'll understand where he fits in at.
D Hop's in the he's in the D Hop's in the news for getting released, which is I guess it was inevitable. It's crazy how bad the Cardinals look right now as far as, you gave your general manager an extension, you fire him, or he steps down. You give your head coach an extension, you fire him the next season. You give the quarterback the extension, and there's a caveat that he can't play too many video games. He's got to watch more film. And then he gets hurt. And then he's, and then. And now they get rid of DeAndre Hopkins, which is, some people say he lost a step. I mean, he's a top 3, 4, 5. He's a top wide receiver in the National Football League.
Wide receiver,
he's a potential Hall of Fame candidate when it's all said and done. Any team in the National Football League would be better with him on the team. Would D-Hop make the Packers? No, I mean, we could use a veteran wide receiver. I know he's 100%. But in the world of you put your general manager hat on, AG, and you go, okay, in that world, does it even make sense to consider a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, given what he's going to cost? I mean, does he vault you into any sort of contention at all? Playoffs, division, anything?
I say within a division right now, because there's so many loose ends, I say, are moving parts on this team, because you got defense that we're going to talk about later. You got Rashard Gary right now. He's questionable on his return because of just knowing when he's going to heal up. And you have a new quarterback. You got young receivers that do have experience. You have 2 receivers that have years under their belt in terms of Hobbs and Watson. But then you have a whole slew of newly drafted receivers that are come in, and somebody's going to break into the starting lineup. I know, it should be that because of competition. Somebody from these young group of receivers should break in. So with all those moving pieces, and then online, as we just talked about. So with those moving parts, I don't see nothing other than within that division, maybe being a little stiffer against Detroit, beating the Bears as usual, and then having a game that could then put us, if they could punch out the Vikings as well, then that would be huge. But we know right now the scale is weighing towards Detroit, Minnesota leading this division.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it makes a difference. I was trying to think. I'm going to go through a couple of names for you. Are there any best remaining free agents that would actually put them in a contention for I think Detroit's going to run away with this division. Maybe Minnesota shows. I mean, Minnesota, you just don't know what you're going to get with Kirk Cousins. I really like that they picked up Brian. I think Brian Flores is like the biggest pickup football player or otherwise in the NFC North this year. Honestly, Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest deal. But let's just go through these. Marcus Peters is out there. Marcus Peters was, for me, for a small window of time, was the best cornerback in the league. He's no longer that. He had an ACL injury 2 years ago. He wasn't the same guy last year. I don't think there's an Eric Stokes issue that we can talk about, or kind of a toss-up. Rasul Douglas, Eric Stokes, what do we have? I don't think Marcus Peters is the answer. What about you?
I like his experience, but it's just we got to see physically. Obviously, you said, the knee is going to hold him off because physically we're going to need him there more than anything. We know when he's on point, that means when he's 100%. Just got to see how far that knee has gone away. Took away some of his talent, some of his speed, some of the aggressiveness as a DB, because he's a big DB and he likes to get physical. He likes to get in guys' faces. Will we be able to see that? That's a question you don't know because of the healing, and then obviously getting him on that practice field and just age. I'm looking at what else we looking at. If you're looking at DBs or more, I'll say we fine with running backs. There's about 3 running backs out there: Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel, and Leonard Fournette. We're clear there. We don't need nobody there.
You think about Ndamukong Suh. He's not going to want to come because he wants to go.
Yeah, he's going to wait till Super Bowl time.
But I'm just telling you right now, I've been around Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh is a businessman first.
Yep.
Okay. 100%. That dude, the way he takes care of his body, because he's a Nebraska guy. He's such a freak athlete that he can play. He does a basketball workout. He doesn't even work. I mean, he works out hard. He takes care of himself, but he's not moving weight like we see a lot of dudes do.
Yeah.
He's playing the long game.
Yep.
At this stage in his career, he could step in right now. He'd be your second defensive tackle. I mean, he's at 36 years old. I think he's that good. I don't know if he's not going to come here and he won't make you a contender, but he's that good.
No, you need a lot of things going on to become a contender on this Packer team right now in this division. It'll be a lot. It'll be some miracles. I would say that. Some big plays that we didn't see happening. Big games too.
I think Jadeveon Clowney still hasn't signed yet, right? He still hasn't signed?
No, he's open. Yep, he's available.
So if he's open, here's my take. I think Jadeveon Clowney was drafted way higher than he should have been. I think that Michigan game where
he lit up the running back,
one play was he's always been an above average run defender. I think he's a very, very average pass rush specialist. I just don't think he's ever been that good. I've game planned against him a ton. He's a phenomenal athlete, but it's like I just don't think he's going to bring enough to justify bringing somebody like that in and taking reps away from Agnabari, taking reps away from Van Ness. Like, it just doesn't make. I don't know the difference is going to be that big of a. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference.
Yeah, there's not much out there. Yeah, it wouldn't be much of a difference. It almost be a waste because then he's older, and then the next year, what you going to do with him? And now Agnabari, he's young. Rashard Gary's coming off the injury; he'll be refreshed. Mm-hmm. And so you have the pieces in place. You just got to see how now these Lego pieces are going to come together and make it work.
What if Yannick Ngakoue wanted to come to Green Bay? He's good.
From Indianapolis. Yep, that was there.
Yep,
health-wise,
Raiders guy, Indy guy.
Yep.
He's good. I've scouted him for the last 3-4 years. He's got a
How
couple
big
moves.
Is he? I'm trying to think of his
small.
size.
He's a lot smaller than you think he is.
Is he like a Avril that was Avril that was in Seattle? Is he like him?
Yeah. He's quicker. He's more linear. Okay. He's got great upfield moves, chop club rip at the top. He's got an inside club at the top and a stab to a chop. He's still a very good player. I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't been picked up somewhere. I think he's like
must be his size.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe guys just start looking for that. Yeah, because we're running the 3-4. It's like, where do you fit him in? He's kind of been a hand down on the ground player for most of his career.
Right.
I just think he's not a good run defender. We're a terrible run defense.
We need that. Yeah, we need
below average.
2 or 3 guys.
Should be.
2 or 3 guys to help stop the run. Yeah.
Frank Clark's out there. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like
Adrian Amo's still available. Yeah. He's somebody
but he's not available, right? Like they're not bringing him back at this point, right? Do you think?
I mean, no. I'm just saying if we were, like we're talking, there's an option.
Do you think that they would bring Adrian Amos back at this stage? Would you think they would bring Adrian? I mean, because right now it's Darnell and Rudy Ford.
Yeah.
at
I don't
safety.
think they will. I'm
yeah.
just saying as options out there.
Mhm.
There's potential. And will they do it? Probably not. Because
I wonder if he'd come back.
what's that?
He'd start immediately, right?
He will start immediately, and he'll already have that. He's already been here. He's a leader. Like people right instantly. It'll just mesh right together with everybody else. Like
AG,
Rudy.
you're up there. What happened there? Like, why didn't he? Why did they get rid of him? Why is it like summarily he's gone when they don't really have options? Like they haven't had high
It,
level play there, and he was the
it
best player there.
right. It came down to what I was seeing is the problem between him. Now it wasn't him, but it was the effects of Savage's gameplay that then led to because that affected him because he was supposed to be on the back end or whatever helping him out, and Savage not having his experience of reading routes and all that stuff, being in the right defense when he should, he had one responsibility, didn't do it. He got influenced to pull out of here. That led to stuff that affected Adrian
But
on the
there
back.
wasn't like locker room off the
No,
because you start going like,
no,
okay,
I
Darnell
never once
Savage is a
heard
first
anything
round
about
pick.
him. Yeah,
Darnell Savage is a first round pick, so it's very like you and I can cross this bridge very quickly. Goody picked out Darnell Savage, or that this regime. He's going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're going to keep him, get rid of Adrian. Like we can cross
exactly.
that bridge any day of the week, no matter
That
how the
always
performance
happens.
is.
Yeah. Yep.
But Rudy Ford came in and played pretty well, but you still like listen. There's still some limitations as to what your secondary can do with these two guys playing your two starting safeties. And Adrian Amos has been a good player for this team. Did he have a year last year that wasn't his best? Yeah, but I don't know. That is you bring his name up, and I start going like, man, maybe they do bring him back in training camp. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a good thing to have on your back end. If I say your inventory, you're only you're only as good as your next best player. Basically, you could say that, and having him back there wouldn't be a bad deal.
All right, here's the last one I got for you: Teddy Bridgewater.
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that.
Dude, who's our backup right now?
Exactly. We got to look it up.
Yeah, so I mean,
we got Sean Clifford and Danny Etling, and so I like Teddy back there because he's been multiple places. He's led teams to that point where there were just one game there, and then an injury happened or something happened. So he has that type of game and leadership and mindset where if he came off the bench, obviously he'll be coming off the bench in a situation where Jordan Love has a bad game, where it's to that point, okay, let's just sit him. That could happen. And now you put a veteran in that can then motivate, but he's not going to be like, I'm not the starter. I'm just backing him up. I could see him doing that, where he's like, I'm just backing Jordan Love up to make sure, I had to finish this game for him. He had a bad one. Then boom. Now, he's still the starter type of conversation.
Teddy Bridgewater was a rising star in this league until he had that horrific injury.
Yes, indeed.
Right? So with that said, he's got to feel like he's just unfinished business all day, every day. Right.
Yeah. 100%.
When you are, and so I'm not disagreeing with you that he maybe mindset wise he's humble enough to be like, all right, this is the kid they've picked, like he's going to start, I'll back him up.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with a kid like Teddy Bridgewater or a man like Teddy Bridgewater is that he's good enough that if Jordan Love has a string of a bad game, two bad games, there's going to be rumblings in the locker room like Teddy Bridgewater can play football for this team. What are we doing? That's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem with bringing in a backup who could potentially be a starter.
True.
You know what I
mean?
You just
got to be ready for that. Like as a GM and as a head coach, you got to say to yourself, while you're having this conversation, you the GM, I'm the head coach. I'm like, all right, well, I'll be ready to deal with that then. I'll be able to handle that for myself. I got to handle this as a head coach. If that comes into play, I got to be ready for that because with that situation you just explained has happened and most likely can happen if you bring Teddy Bridgewater in as a backup.
So this is different than like, let's say the Niners where they have Brock Purdy, who's the last pick in the draft.
Yeah.
And then they had Jimmy G or Trey Lance. Like they have guys that have been there and nobody thinks that Brock Purdy's going to be able to play and he's a short-term solution. And then that's one thing. Or like Jimmy G's gone, so they already got rid of Trey Lance, or they already drafted Trey. Trey got hurt. Jimmy's back. He gets, you start. That's completely different than I decided that Jordan Love is going to replace 30 years of Hall of Fame talent or 15 years of Hall of Fame talent. Yeah. That's a totally different, like we've chosen, this is the guy that's going to do it.
It's going to be somebody if it wasn't Jordan. Just know that.
You're absolutely right about that, bro. But I guess if it was me, I'd be like, hey, Jordan Love's our guy. And oh, by the way, I'm going to bring the biggest shit. I'm going to bring the shittiest backup quarterback I can find. I'm going to bring a running back who can throw the football. He's our backup. In other words, we are going to live and die with this kid because I can't be like, as a general manager and a head coach right now, I can't be wrong.
True. And that's that pressure. I say is up to that person. Like if Gutekunst or that GM wants to have that type of pressure, they better know how to handle it. Because if they don't, it's gonna handle them, pretty much.
I think it could be. I think it could be. I think it could be a big problem, man. I mean,
it could be.
It has blown up franchises before, right? Now, I don't think there's two things that sometimes I sound like I'm down on Jordan Love, and I'm not at all. I just know this is a big moment in the.
Yeah, it's just a lot of stuff going on
right?
that can happen between here now and the first regular season game.
Me personally, I'm more interested in what this means as a reflection of like how Matt LaFleur is going to deal with not having Brett. I think, or not having Aaron. I just think that's the most interesting storyline, really. Like, not the players, because the players going to adapt. I think the way the coaching staff has to adapt is going to be super interesting.
Exactly. We're going to see how LaFleur and his coaches are they coaches. We're going to find this out this season. As they're saying, I think you mentioned it last week or a couple weeks ago, where LaFleur, or you said LaFleur can't coach now because you don't have Aaron always giving out feedback about what call this should have been.
I didn't say he can't coach. I said we're going to find out if he can coach.
There you go. So that's what I'm saying. So yeah, 100% like echoing what you just said last week, 2 weeks ago. That right there, we're gonna find out if LaFleur and all the rest of those coaches on that staff. I say more LaFleur than anything because he has more conversations with the quarterbacks to the QB coach as well. How good are you at coaching? And now you got a young guy to mold into the next whatever quarterback that the Packers are going to have.
We got some defensive questions coming up this offseason. We just talked about Adrian Amos.
Mm-hmm.
What are your big question marks for this year? I just started like writing some thoughts down here. You know, what like Eric Stokes is coming back. Is Rasul Douglas or Eric Stokes going to be the second guy? Is Rasul Douglas like, is he a top level cornerback, or is he a guy that happened to have a ton of picks when we picked him off the street?
Yeah, right? I mean, he is that factually. That's what happened. He got him off the street.
But is he more than that, right? Because like last year, let's be honest, Jair Alexander is an all pro. Period. He's the best player on defense. Yeah, I mean, maybe if Gary's healthy, maybe we can start different positions, but same impact on the game. Jair Alexander is the best player on our defense right now, going into the last game of last season. But if a team wants to throw, they're throwing to Rasul Douglas. Now, if a team wants to throw next year, they're going to throw to Eric Stokes or. But who's going to take that spot? Who's going to own it? Because Eric Stokes wasn't lighting the world on fire. He wasn't playing bad, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire when he got hurt. And so now, like, how's that competition going to go? And then what are they going to do with that third player? Maybe that's why they think Darnell Savage goes from nickel corner back to safety, because they're going to have one of those two guys who's going to play it.
Yeah, I'll say the first thing, I'm looking at a roster of 21 defensive backs for the Packers right now. Wow. So 21 tells me competition is in the room. I mean, we probably got Big Ten players, the SEC players, the ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, all in the room. So from just that right there, inventory is who's the best men in this room that's going to step up to two starting corners and free safety, strong safety. We need 4 guys. Who's going to be those 4 guys after the guys we already mentioned? So they bring in Jonathan Owens from the Texans to put that competition more.
Jonathan
here we
Owens
go.
Can play. He can play.
Yeah, Owens was a starter, was a player at the Texans. We're bringing him in the room too. Because if you didn't do that, I know you did it. I know I did it. When new running backs came in the room, my radar was I already knew they were coming in the room. So I'm not nervous. I'm not like worried as a player in that position because I already did my homework on them. I know they're coming in. They're doing this to wrap up the competition. So if you ain't about that competition life, then from those player standpoints, then you're gonna exit yourself out stage left very fast.
The only guy in that room who isn't worried is Jair Alexander.
No, he's that dude. I already said that. He's that dude.
Yeah, the only guy who, let me rephrase that then. The only person who shouldn't be worried. Everybody else in that room, if they're like, "Oh, I don't care who they bring in," I'd be like, "You should care.
You better be thinking about it."
Not a single one of the rest of those guys.
Take notes.
Right, they can all be replaced. There's only one guy in that room who can't be replaced. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Number 23. 23. Yep. You could put whatever you want, a circle around him, a star next to his name. That number right now, due to injury. Other than that, that's the only thing that can take him out is injury.
Outside of that, he's a really good player.
Valentine, all those guys, Hopper. They need to come with their lunch pails, learn that, come out there with that game showing off now, and then finishing in justification come training camp in August, July, August, to say to this team, okay, I'm your number 5 swing man. I'm gonna be number 6 or 7 because we need the top 8 guys to be on that field in their rotation. So that's what those defensive coordinator coaches are looking at.
We'll be super interested to see who plays the safety position. So see
Mhm.
those two guys are. The other thing is who's the second the defensive lineman. So Mean Dean Lowry's gone.
Yeah.
Obviously, they drafted Wyatt, first round pick last year. We have Reeds. We have guys that can play there. Do we have guys that can dominate there? Is Wyatt going to transition into an athlete who can play against rookie guards, who plays a little bit tall, to a second-year guy who takes that big jump that everybody's hoping for, that turns into a guy that can eat up space, a guy that can penetrate and kind of play the run and the pass equally well? Because Kenny Clark is great. Kenny Clark is a nose tackle. You really could use a penetrating 3 technique in that rotation. Because one of the cool thing about off or defensive lines is if you have a guy that's really good, like Kenny Clark is good enough where you have to game plan against him.
Right.
And that should benefit the next guy, right? And like, for example, Warren Sapp was so good, you had to game plan against Warren, but he never had another guy next to him. Rice on the outside, but I'm talking about on the inside. He never had another guy that we cared about. Right. I forgot who they had before. It was a 290-pound, 285-pound white guy. He was like 6'1". He was a good player, but nobody's worried about
Chris Hovan.
No. Okay, so I'm talking about before Chris Hovan. I'm talking about the 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001. Then they drafted this dude. This
I wasn't playing a whole lot of steps then, so no.
This dude, when he retired, he dropped 100 pounds and started becoming. He became a marathon runner. So even if I picked his name,
I know. I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. So
what are you talking about now? I know exactly what you're talking about. I just can't think of his name.
Not bad mouthing him, but he's not that guy, right? And then they brought in. So what did they do? They drafted Booger McFarland, I think, first round pick out of LSU. But Booger wasn't that guy either. So Booger was just a guy. He was just a body.
He could take space. That was probably.
What I'm saying is,
and he occupied people.
We're not
really good.
If you said, "Hey, Marco, Mike, one of us, we're going to put 2 on Warren, and you got to deal with the other guy," no problem. Not a big deal. Not an issue, right? Whereas if they would have had, I don't know, it's like when you have Chris Jenkins, Mike Rucker, Chris Jenkins, Buckner and Peppers. It's like Buckner's the only guy. Buckner's the only guy you aren't going like, oh man, we got problems everywhere, right? They got 3 guys that are all pro. So that's what I'm saying, right? So even though if Kenny gets doubled, that means we got to free up the 3 technique because they still have to chip off for Rashawn Gary when he gets healthy.
Yeah, I mean,
so there's options there. It's just like that guy has. There's probably not a bigger opportunity to take a jump from year 1 to year 2 than Wyatt, just simply because when healthy, this line creates a situation where you need 2 people to be doubled at all times.
Yeah, and you want to create that problem. All linemen don't like that. I know that for a fact, knowing you guys. But yeah, having the young guys, they got right behind Kenny, even though it's just the OTA depth chart here. Carl Brooks, you got then Kobe Wooden and Jason Lewin. You don't know, because they're all rookies. You got those 3 right there, Carl, Kobe, and Jason, all rookies that then obviously learning scheme, learning their footwork, learning how to exist in the new situation they're in, being in a Green Bay Packer uniform. So you could probably not count them out, but they're learning right now. They're processing. There's a lot going on in that brain other than saying, I'm going to be the starter right now. But a guy that Devontae, you got Chris Slayton who has some snaps too, but to have Kenny out at the end, where he most likely is, like he's an inside guy where he wants to create problems. So you just got to be smart on who you're going to have in that rotation to support Kenny when he needs to take those breaks, because obviously I've been saying this the whole show is you got that next man up. Who's going to be that best guy after? Because we already know he's a Pro Bowler in terms of Kenny Clark and Devontae potentially, but he's got to work for it.
A lot of people talking about Van Ness moving inside. Maybe they do that in nickel, but he's not. He's not a mainstay. He's not a starting player in there. He's just not. He's not 275 pounds. That's unrealistic. Devondre Campbell took a step back last year, I think, in his play. He was an All-Pro, obviously, 2 years ago. Had some injuries last year that kept him out, but even when he came back, wasn't quite as effective. And listen, he's a guy that was a journeyman. he found the right system. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if he did something different in his training, his preparation, the season before 2 years ago. I know that he was adamant about needing to play one position, not trying to be a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can get back to that mindset, that'll be huge. But I think the other thing there is Quay Walker, and everybody wants to talk about, he popped off a little bit and got kicked out of a game. Quay Walker needs to be a more physical player at the point of attack for this Packers team to be a good run defense. And
Yeah.
that is going to be something that you have to address 3 months ago as the offseason started, hey, this is the number one thing that you don't do well, that you need to do well, because if you can get this with your athletic talent, we can go a long ways.
Yeah. And the physical and then the mental, the experience, watching film, getting with somebody, if it's the coach, if it's a veteran, what do I need to do better, in terms of my technique? Obviously, we saw his reaction. He was either too aggressive or not enough. So finding that line of making sure he reacts properly to every play recognition once that ball is snapped, to a run play, to the run play action pass, whatever that reaction is, that he reacts properly, because that's what I saw. False stepping, a lot that he did. We had the speed and talent, but when you're young, that speed just gets you there. It could get you in the wrong place very fast. Basically, what happened with him throughout the last season. So hopefully he can learn from that to then bring his game together for basically the reasons why, one of the reasons why he was drafted, because of his speed, but then that experience, that knowledge up here, using his mind more than more reacting than doing thinking in the practice, where he could then be, I'll say, a better reactor to all his gameplay.
Yeah, I think when you talk about when we say somebody needs to become a more physical player, if you're a football player, if you played linebacker in the National Football League, you're physical. You're a physical player.
Easy.
The difference is, if you have confidence that you can diagnose plays, that you can be on the front foot, that you can do the attacking at the guard level, at the center level, you can hit the holes, if you can attack fullbacks, because you're diagnosing plays, your speed of thought is faster. Then to the general public on tape, you now become a more physical player because you're first to the punch. You see what I mean? So it's not that we're not sitting here you and I aren't saying oh man, this guy's a whatever. It's he's a physical player, but as you process information better, as you become more comfortable with what you're supposed to be doing and how you do it, it will appear, because you get to the punch first, that you'll be a more physical athlete. And that's exactly, I think we're saying the same thing, right? That's what he needs to do.
Exactly. Bang, bam, boom.
AG, of all those guys, oftentimes you say the defense takes the persona of an individual athlete. I talked about Warren Sapp. I talked about John Randall. Obviously Cam Hayward in Pittsburgh is a name that would come up for me. You also talk about sometimes the defensive coordinator is the guy that kind of sets the tone. Who on this defense are you going man, I wish they would all be like that guy. I want everybody to just I want that persona to take over this defense. Do we know enough about these guys to say anybody?
I say, I have two guys actually.
Mm-hmm.
One is Rashard Gary, and then number two would be Zaire Alexander.
Yeah,
it's having their mindset, because it's not just about the end game mindset; it's the preparation mindset too. Because I know Zaire takes his time in practice to study up the guys he's going to face every week. What their personalities are, what their favorite routes are, how they come off the ball. Their first move. And I'm pretty sure Rashard's doing the same thing. And if he's not, he better start doing it now. And every player needs to be doing that, because I knew every linebacker's false step. I knew that if I was running the ball to the right, what Urlacher, how he would run that, how he would play me. And he would either go real fast to the edge, or he would try to slow play me. So he tried to protect my me coming back. So I knew that about him. And when I saw him do one or the other, if I saw him slow play me, then I'm taking to the edge. So it's just those players having that mindset of what I got to do to win every time I play against a player that's going to be in front of me once the regular season get here. But in practice, obviously OTAs now, getting ready for training camp. What is the position? I mean, what is the player I need to be come in that training camp to make sure I'm gonna be either in the rotation or the starter?
I think it was both. Let's can't argue with him. Certainly, I would probably go with Kenny. I'd probably go with Kenny just because he's quiet, goes about his business. He's a veteran leader in that room already. I just you can tell he's a guy. Listen, he just does dirty work, man. He's a water carrier.
Yeah,
he's a water carrier for this team. He's not flashy. In my experience, Jair Alexander is unique. He's a unicorn. He's a unicorn because not a lot of guys can and I think maybe you have to do this. Some of the top guys at cornerback historically have been like he is. He's very, it's like, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah, that's normal.
That doesn't
That's not a mark
play.
against him at all.
No, it's not at all. But
Nope.
it doesn't play with everybody.
True.
It doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't like there's a lot of guys that'll get around a guy like Jai Alexander and say, he's so good, I want to be like him, I'm going to act like that, and they haven't put in the time that he's put.
You got to put in that work. That's why he acts like that.
Yeah, you got a lot of guys that have false bravado. I'm not saying that we have that on the Packers. I'm just saying that is a thing. But what I love about Kenny is Kenny has these moments of he's getting double team, he's fighting, and then they give him a free like one-on-one, and he just destroys the center. He throws a guy on the ground. He physically dominates people. He does his celebrating with his team. Everything's about the group. I love that. I love that what that represents for this team. So that would be my pick. I don't think any of those guys are wrong by any means. I'm a huge Kenny Clark fan. You want to hit some get off my lawn, man, because there's some good stuff this last week. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, we can hit some. Oh man, what did you got here with Le'Veon? What he up to? I looked it up. I'm like, is this old or is this new?
Well, Le'Veon Bell, like, yeah, why are you in the news? He gets on the podcast. Like, it's you get on these podcasts, you start saying stuff. First of all, he talks about how he's getting high before games, which okay, great, good for you. Yeah,
he's not the only one.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be. That's definitely not the biggest news flash on the planet. And then, he spends, of course, he goes on to spend half the thing bashing Adam Gates, who was the coach of the Jets at the time when he brought him in, and obviously the difference between, like, listen, you were with Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is one of the 7 greatest coaches of all time.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's going to be a drop off, man. You went from the Steelers, top 3 franchise in the world, to the Jets, at the current status are not a top 3 franchise in the world.
Yeah, especially at that time.
Yeah, we get it, man. Like, sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes we air laundry. It's like, dude,
you gotta.
We get it.
We get it, and you better think about what you're about to say and the repercussions of what you said, especially out on the airways, because they all get words thrown out there and then edited, clipped into sounding something else. So you better be ready for that, Mr. Bell. So.
I think there's just knowing what I know and talking to the coaches that I talk to, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, even at the head coaching position, goes because of the organization that you're with, goes behind the scenes. Is like, I don't think as players, like, I know I was totally naive to how much handcuffing there was actually going on even at the highest levels by like an owner.
Yes.
It really is.
Me too. I was naive as well.
Right? Yeah.
I learned after the fact. I was like, what?
So Jimmy Garoppolo gets, he goes over to the Raiders.
Yep.
But he had like foot surgery. He never passed his physical.
I saw that. I was like,
So here's the deal. Is
it Oakland has a leverage or?
Oh, well, so they can release him and they don't owe him a nickel until they sign him, until he comes off this injury deal. And so I'm like, I can't figure out. I mean, for the life of me, I can't figure out who signs that contract. I mean, I know you got to pass a physical, and there's an addendum. They did the whole thing, but it's like, if right now they could because he hasn't passed it,
right?
They could say, because Devontae Adams is out there going like, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if we're going to win with Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know how he said it, but he said something that wasn't great, and then he backtracked, and I love it, blah, 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 blah. But you start going like, well, wait a second now. Are we in what kind of shape are we in? And by the way, it's not like this guy hasn't had a ridiculous injury history over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think they're not signing him because they need a QB. Let's just start there first.
Yeah. That's a good point. Who are they going to go get? Teddy Bridgewater.
Right. There's not much out there. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there. Well, you know what they said? Tom Brady, because McDaniels. They said Tom Brady's.
I did hear that. I did see that.
And he like part owner of the team now or something like that.
Yeah, he did.
Yep.
I saw that. I saw those 2 things. So.
He could build like the next Bill Russell player coach.
True.
Pete Rose, Bill Russell, manager coach.
Thing like Bill Russell, I would have been okay with that.
That would have been crazy. I would have been like, all right, man, it's a big play coming up, guys. Huddle up.
Yeah, I would have been okay with that.
Like, who's gonna get the ball? And you're just like, I will.
Exactly.
I'll take the shot,
yeah. Even so, having time in the huddle, I was like, okay, yeah, we're good here. Yeah.
You mentioned this guy's name earlier, but let's talk about Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen thing, okay?
Yes. What is going on here?
Somebody needs to get Scottie Pippen a goddamn therapy dog or something. Like,
oh my God, something.
He sounds so petty. I mean, Michael Jordan had, rookie season set the world on fire, averaged like 28, gets hurt the next year, comes back healthy, goes into the playoffs, drops 63 on Boston. They lose the series, and Larry Bird, who's in the middle of like his second of like 3 MVPs, says he is the best player he's ever seen in his second year in the league. Larry Bird says Michael Jordan is somebody said it this morning. That would be like, I don't know, that would be like LeBron right now saying, no, LeBron's probably a bad one. That would be like Kobe saying LeBron was the best player in the league, like, in the middle of Kobe's run. Like, that makes no sense, right? Then he drops 37 points a game the next year. Then he has one of the best statistical seasons ever in his 4th year. And so they're not winning like a ton of playoff games. So like Scottie Pippen. Oh, and by the way, he was a 6-time, I think he was a 6-time or 8-time point leader, scoring leader with Scottie Pippen. Like, what are you talking about?
Says Jordan was a terrible player before him.
Why would you use the word terrible? I'm a terrible player. You want to know who a terrible basketball player is? Me. I'm a terrible
me too.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
With the basketball in my hand, I'm just thinking about going to YouTube and learning basketball dribble skills.
It sucks when nobody mentioned it, but Jordan's son was dating Pippen's ex-wife. Let's just call it.
That is known.
That would make me sad and angry. But it's almost like you're ruining your legacy.
Yeah, he has pent up emotions and stuff he probably wanted to say, never said it. Because you remember his negotiation of his contract, he never really pushed the envelope with the GM at the Bulls.
Krause, yep.
Yeah, he ate up. He basically had to eat that contract he got, which everybody knew in the world he should have got paid more. And obviously, I think by this time he know he should have got paid more. And I think this is just that emotion coming out in different ways. He's attacking former teammates, guys that you shouldn't be attacking, but he's like at the point where feeling emotion. When you get your emotions tied into this, you know this, Mike. When emotions get going in this space, it's not good. It's not a good turnout for anybody. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good either. Because Pippen, when you heard Pippen and Jordan, you're like, I pictured Bulls winning by 20 all the time, high-fiving each other, buddy. Not this right here. So
there was a time when people said Scottie Pippen was the second best player in the NBA.
Exactly. And, I was one of those people.
Yeah. So it's like, man, I don't know why you have nothing but gratitude. But it does. Right. It is interesting, man, because you were talking about leadership earlier. We're talking about Jordan Love and like what kind of style he has, and like, Michael Jordan. And maybe it's because we have too many therapy dogs now. Maybe it's because this generation, like, we're judging. And he was a hard ass, right? He pushed people hard, but we're also doing this thing where we're judging historical events based on present context, which you can't do.
You can't do.
And so now everybody he was a monster, and all these, like, this guy's coming out 20 years after winning 6 rings and going, "Oh, woe is me! I had it so tough. I was number 2 to the best player that ever walked the face of the earth." And it is kind of interesting though.
Yeah.
When you talk about you talk about Jordan and LeBron and their leadership styles. You talk about Kobe and his leadership style and how like him and Shaq used to go back and forth.
Yep.
You talk about how Tom Brady, how he is like demanding, but also brings up, he'd have all these extra things going on and working with receivers. How Aaron didn't want to necessarily spend the time. How Brett said, it's not my job to
Brett said
coach Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. I remember him saying that.
I remember, when I went to Carolina, like I was used to being on an offense that wanted to be the best offense in the league year in, year out, statistically and otherwise. Mm-hmm. We all thought we were, Pro Bowl, all pro caliber players. And when I got to there, and it was like mediocrity is the bar they've set. They want to average 19 points a game. People acted like that. And when you get put in that situation, you try to change it, dude. I tell you firsthand, like I was very abrasive. I'd be abrasive with coaches, abrasive with players, and like it rubs a lot
of Houston
people
for me.
Yeah,
that was Houston for me.
Rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah,
and looking back, like I could have. Looking back, you go, I probably could have handled it better, or I could have handled it differently. I should have tried something. I don't know, but it's also like, well, you gotta be who you like. You gotta be who you are, man. Like, what does Mark Wahlberg say? I'm a peacock. Let me fly, or whatever it is.
Right.
Man.
I ain't gonna say peacock.
You got to do your thing.
I'm gonna say something like I'm a lion, or I'm a pit bull. Just let me scrap. Get out my way. Let me.
It's very unique. Someone that has the emotional capability to read a room, know what you need to get done, and have the wherewithal to meet everybody where they're at. Right? I don't have that I'm just telling you, I don't have that emotional IQ. I wish I did, and I work on it, but I don't have it. When I'm in that building.
That's what I had coming into Green Bay. Mm-hmm. I read the room. I knew what I needed to do. Well, and then two, I was guided by coaches. Said, "Hey, you're coming in to back up Dorsey." But then also, I knew that once I got in, whenever my time was to run the rock, pass protect, catch the ball, be the running back for that offense, I knew, okay, I got to do this, because a lot of those guys, you were there as well in your first year. Now on the active roster, those guys have been to 2 Super Bowls. Most of those guys in 2000.
It's a different sensation, right? You're coming in. You have when you say read the room, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to read the room. All right, we got a 4-time MVP over there, Hall of Fame player. Like, it's a little bit different, right? It's because the expectations are already there. It's like, how am I going to fit into this?
So it was a little bit easier, obviously, right?
I'm talking about scenarios where, like with Jordan or all these, like they're not champion. They weren't 2-time Super Bowl.
Right, and that's you still got to read the room then, and like for
no question.
Yeah, I mean, you read that room, and as a fan, we all, like you mentioned, we all knew Scottie Pippen was number 2 player in the league. That's how he was considered. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't on the TV, wasn't on ESPN or whatever outlet, they might not have said, but everybody watching the game, players themselves, they knew that, because they knew, okay, we see 33 and 23 on the court. They did. You could cancel out the other 3 players. You know, you didn't know who wore 5. You didn't know who wore 10. You just knew, okay, it's a guy running around, which is BJ Armstrong. You got John Paxson over there, number 5, running around. BJ Armstrong, number 10 over here. Steve Kerr was 25. You was like, okay, these 23 and 33, those are the guys we got to get on, because if we slow them down, we're gonna have problems. And so it's just unfortunate. And he may be just, like you said, letting off some steam.
Well, I think last time he had a book coming out. By the way,
that's good.
I think for The Last Dance, like 2 years ago, he had a book coming out.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on now.
We'll see.
All right.
Well, that'll be an interesting book. That'll be an interesting read. That will be a very interesting read,
bro. Here's what I'm gonna guarantee you. I'm not reading that book. Everything you got to know. He just said
we lived it, and I know so many people from Chicago area that I could get I knew the lowdown before this book. So if it is a book.
AG, good show today, man. Where can these guys find you?
Oh man, thanks, Mike. You can find me on Instagram at Amon Green 30 all one word, and that's Twitter as well. Then also Amon Green's Gamers Lounge on TikTok and YouTube, talking about the video game world and the esports that is involved, and that's what I do. So that's where you can find me, Mike. Let everybody know where they can find you at.
Mike68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. Always a pleasure doing a show with you. You can find us on our Process to Perform channel here on YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review. You can find us on the Believe Network, anywhere you get your podcasts. And AG, man, we'll see you next week.
See you next week, bro.
AG, you want to get some? Let's get some outro music to top this thing off. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Get it. Believe it. What timing?
I love it.